For those of you who don't know us, though, British in Europe is a citizens' rights campaign group. We advocate on behalf of the 1.3 million Brits living on the continent who are directly affected by Brexit, and we work hand in hand with the 3 million EU citizens living in the UK, and we've become friends, and we do everything together. So when I say we, I am referring to the 5 million of us who are directly affected by Brexit on day one, and we're the untold story today, because the citizens' rights component of Brexit constantly gets swept under the carpet, and we've been told it's a done deal. Well, frankly, if they can reopen the withdrawal agreement to talk about Northern Ireland, then they should be able to reopen it to talk about citizens' rights, because it's a very bad deal. So, just to give you a quick view of where we are now, the great 19th century Russian novelist and social critic Fyodor Dostoevsky once wrote that you can judge a society by how it treats its prisoners. Well, I'd like to think that if he were alive and living in Britain today, he might have written, you can judge the health of a democracy by how it treats its citizens who cannot vote. And when it comes to British in Europe and the 3 million citizens living on the EU citizens living in the UK, the vast majority of whom could not vote in 2016, our story is one of brazen lies, broken promises, and bargained lives. It starts with the brazen lies, and you can say that there are so many brazen lies on Brexit. But in 2016, Vote Leave, the major architects of the Leave campaign, falsely put out information that said that all Brits living in Europe and all EU citizens living in the UK would have their rights protected in the event of Brexit. I can count at least 5 politicians, Tim Loughton, Gisela Stewart, Steve Baker, Michael Gove, and one Boris Johnson, who all claimed that the Vienna Convention would protect us and give us all our rights, whether it was healthcare or free movement. This was not true. Not only was it not true, but those of us who raised legitimate concerns about what might happen in the event of a Brexit were accused of scaremongering. And we can only assume that this was done in order to suppress the anxiety of big-hearted Leave voters who would be concerned about what would happen to friends and family in Europe. It gives us no pleasure to have been proven right about what these lies were, because there is no such thing as the Vienna Convention when it comes to people's lives. So that's the first point about democracy. The second is that even at the beginning of the negotiations, there was a chance for the UK and the EU to do the right thing by us. Both Theresa May and Michel Barnier and the EU 27 all said that their stated aim when it came to the people was that we should be allowed to carry on our lives as though Brexit hadn't happened. So why is it that 3 weeks ago, if this was the promise, that Matt Hancock, the Health Secretary in the UK, chose the first day of the Labour Party conference to slip out an announcement that the British government was only going to fund healthcare, S1 healthcare, for 6 months in the event of a no-deal Brexit. Shocking. Just so you know, S1 healthcare is a reciprocal right that you get from being in the EU, and it entitles those who have retired to another EU country or who have disabilities to receive healthcare in the country that they are in, and it will be reimbursed by the member state that they're originally from. So the UK government currently pays the healthcare for about 180,000 pensioners and disabled people, Brits, living in the EU. So they get 6 months of healthcare in the event of no-deal Brexit, or 12 months if they've already started treatment. So what does that mean for Linda, who's 75 and lives in Spain, currently undergoing cancer treatment for stage 4 cancer? Or Denise in Italy, who's in a similar position? Or Roger, who's 80 and lives in France? What happens to them in 6 months or 12 months? The UK is basically saying that it is going to airbrush us out of the picture, and the minute that its legal obligations are discharged, it is abdicating any moral or legal responsibility in relation to some of its most vulnerable and anxious citizens.
It's disgraceful.
It is a disgrace. And finally, bargained lives. We were told that our lives wouldn't be bargained, that we would be protected. This has not happened. We have seen a race to the bottom on people's lives from the word go in the negotiations. And the main driver of this was Theresa May's obsession with cutting immigration and ending free movement once and for all. So every opportunity she had to cut a right for EU citizens living in the UK, she was perfectly happy to see her own citizens negotiated into a terrible position the ones of us who lived on the continent. And the reason why this matters, the reason why losing free movement matters so much, is because 80% of British citizens living on the continent are working age or younger. We rely on free movement and cross-border working for our families and our lives. We're not rich. Losing this right is not a luxury. It is losing a lifeline. So what? You left. You gave up any rights when you left your country. You know, you're not from here. Why does it matter? Suck it up. Well, if they can do this to us, the people who can't vote, what makes you think they won't do it to you back in the UK? There are already signs that this is going to happen. Our rights are the rights of the Brits living in the UK. We can see it in the political declaration, already the government trying to water down the protections on workers' rights and the environment. The glee with which Priti Patel announced an end to free movement for once and all. She tried to celebrate this as ending free movement for EU citizens in the UK. She can't do that because only losing EU citizenship removes free movement. She can make life harder for them. But what she's actually doing is celebrating taking away the rights from 66 million of her own citizens in the UK. The largest removal of rights and freedoms since the end of the fall of communism and the fall of the Berlin Wall, and this government is celebrating that. So even if you don't care about Brits living on the continent, even if you don't care about EU citizens living in the UK, people in the UK, you should be very worried about what's coming down the line for you, because this government wants to take away as many democratic rights as it can, and we are the litmus test for that.